Welcome to another wonderful episode of Punch Sports Extra. My name is Shegun Odun. I have my co-anchor, co-analyst, and colleague here with me, and together I'll be taking you through 28, 29, 30 minutes of the very best of sporting updates, especially as it pertains to results that came in the last couple of hours of the past weekend. We start like we always do every Monday morning with the front page of Punch Sports Extra, the print edition, and their pictures are boldly, yes, their pictures are boldly put right there on the front page. Champions of the Nigerian Premier Football League, Remo Stars, finally, after being dubbed the nearly men and the Nigerian Arsenal, they've been able to get to the zenith just when many persons thought it was no longer possible. Biodun, we start with Remo Stars this morning, of course. Champions, the pictures of their players, their manager, the team on the front page this morning. Deserved 37 games. They've won it as far back as I think 36 games. The last home game against Ikorodu City yesterday, even though they went one goal down, they came back strongly and scored 4 goals and turned it 4-1. We were there yesterday and it was an interesting sight.
You have to compare them to Arsenal. That is very disrespectful.
Who is Aya? Remo Stars.
Remo Stars have tasted. They've known what it's like to raise a title, at least in the last decade. So they are miles apart from each other now. So they are no longer the nearly men. That comparison is no longer valid.
It's gone.
It's gone. So
like fuel subsidy.
Champions of our land, you know, the way they are, it's been a long way coming, especially in the last, if I want to say that this season is almost gone, let's say especially in the last 3 seasons, being third in 2021, 2022, coming second agonizingly in 2022, 2023. Can you imagine losing a title by goal difference? And
that was 2 seasons ago.
2 seasons ago.
At the Super 6.
At the Super 6. And not just, aside from the goal difference, you have to think of a game like Remo Stars versus Rivers United. Olamile Kandida was scoring a power-driving, screaming goal in the 90
His
plus
nickname
minutes.
is Ebola.
So the virus just went around the stadium that day. Everybody was jubilating, and before we knew it, Remo Stars had the ball at the back of their net again, 2-2. And you know, that was one game that defined that Super 6 players for Remo Stars.
2 seasons ago.
And eventually they played against Bendel Insurance in the last game, had a lot of scoring chances, but they only played 1-0. Enyimba just came against Rivers United in the last game, did the job, won the league by goal difference. Who loses the league in that manner? In that fashion. They came back against last season. They started like, this is our season. But it didn't work still because somewhere in Enugu, Fidelis Ilechukwu and Rangers International
said no.
Wanted to come back to what they wanted to restore that glory that Rangers used to have, and they did it in style. I think they've had some turning points in the last 2 or 3 seasons, and all these things have forged them into who they are. Look at how far they've been able to go this season. The highest number of goals, the least number of goals conceded. Not in terms of losing games. They lost as many as 10 games this season, but they ensure that their home has been a fortress. And what we saw yesterday is a result of long-term investment, not just an happenstance of just maybe they were good. They were not just good. They've been building something special, and the result is what we see. And maybe the handwriting has been on the wall too. They have a junior team, Beyond Limits, who went to Italy to win the Viragio Cup last year. Yeah. They started a female football team in 2023. This year,
in the Super
6 of the NPFL playoffs. And so the signs have been there. I think at the era of their success, we've seen them missing out on the group stages of the Champions League. You know, so now that might just be the next step.
All right, let's quickly talk about yesterday, and I mean in 1 minute about the season before we even now go into the future. They came strong into the season, and then the likes of 3SC were challengers, and they fell by the wayside. Yeah. Then there was Rivers United. Rivers United equally fell by the wayside, and you know, a lot of other guys, but nobody had come to that level of Remo Stars this season, if you are being honest. Ikorodu City started very poorly.
Yeah.
They were in the relegation waters one time, and then they came up really strongly that they could have made Africa, if not for the loss yesterday, which has confirmed that they are going nowhere. But there was something in that Remo Stars. I mean, there was magic. They didn't necessarily have the highest goal scorer in the league, but they clicked as a team. What did they do differently this time around?
I think the mentality had to change. Last season, or 2 seasons ago, or last season, there was this over-reliance on, maybe not over-reliance, but then we all knew the goals had to come from one man, Sikiru Alimi. But then, Alimi, as a striker, as prolific as he was last season, he was in the race for the highest goal scorer award and all of that last season. But then, there were certain days that Alimi failed to deliver for the team. And before you knew it, they were losing ground in the title chase. But this season, everybody just had to come to the party. Ebola particularly being very instrumental, scoring screamers at every opportunity that he had. There were certain mid-season recruitment that made a lot of difference too. Number one, Samson Olashukbo, who came from a former Sunshine Stars player who came from abroad, joined them midway through the season. At some point, Remo Stars were winning by just a goal.
One goal.
And it was someone like Samson Olashukbo who would come from the bench to get the goal. Someone like Olamilekan Adedayo coming from the bench or even starting to get the goal. If you remember too, there was one particular halftime video that Remo Stars dropped. I think that was their game against Abia Warriors in Ikene, where they had to come back from 2 goals down to win 3-2. That was one hell of a game too that defined their season. So the mentality had to change. Everybody had to step up to the party. Then I think maybe they saw it too. Kayode Bankole had been the #1 over time now. But they had to bring in a
reliable number 1.
Our brother from Benin Republic, Serge Obasa, Adeni Obasa. Seems like he has a Yoruba root, but then he just had to come and do the job for Remo Stars too. Very reliable.
Very reliable.
And on the days that Remo Bankole had to come in between the sticks too, he delivered. There was stiff competition between the sticks. Everybody had to let their head be correct, like we see in the local parlance. And in the defense too. Marshaled by Captain Junior Onduka, you have to give it to that guy. Started from the bottom as an academy player with them, and he's leading them to their first ever NPFL title. Look at them through the middle and up to the front line as well. I think they've ticked every box that they needed to ensure that they get what they've been looking for.
All right, we'll be coming back to Remo Stars later on in the show. I mean, we just needed to highlight it that strongly. I'm sure you are watching some of the clips yesterday, but we'll be coming back to it later on in the show. Let's quickly still stick with the front page and then go into European football before we land back on local turf. Sandro Tonali was helping his club down Chelsea. But guess what? Manchester United are reported to want him for £100 million. He's a fantastic player, no doubt about that. Came from AC Milan. Despite his ban issues and all of that, he has put his name out there. Fantastic midfielder, can go up front. But Sandro Tonali, what's £100 million?
I don't think a player that has just come back from a ban in the last one season, I don't think his market value should be rising as fast as that. How much did they even buy him in the first place from?
I think it was expensive. I think it was
around 30 or 40.
No, I think it was more than that.
More than that.
Yeah, it was more than that. He was quite high.
So
in fact, the reason Milan sold him was because they needed the money.
So after one season now, you don't skyrocket to 100. Or maybe United are just bad spenders in quotes. If you are placing £100 million on Sandro Tonali, how desperate are you to get a midfielder that you have to just dip your hands into your pocket and say, okay, here is £100 million on the table, give us this man? Is it that kind of marquee of a signing? Is it the missing?
As Wenger once said, for him to buy a £100 million player, you must dribble from the back, dribble everybody, and go and score. Then you are worth £100 million. But these days, well, maybe not. All right, talking about a man that has been scoring for fun in recent time. Unfortunately, Punch Sport Extra print front page says, wasted goals. Kylian Mbappe's hat-trick against Barcelona goes to waste after they lost 4-3. Remember that he has scored 38 goals so far for Real Madrid this season. And he is the first player for Real Madrid to have scored that number of goals in his debut season. Unfortunately, he's going trophyless at the end of this season. Unfortunately. Indeed a waste of. I think I agree with that headline. A waste of goals. Really.
At the sight of our headline too, my mind just went straight to Yoruba sportscasters around Ibadan and somewhere in Korea. They will have been screaming Mbappe Shelason.
For those who don't understand, what does that mean?
He just labored in vain.
Labored in vain. Labored in vain.
You know, when we were seated in Ikene yesterday, when I heard Mbappe already has a brace, had a goal cancelled for what will have been his hat-trick, eventually scoring a hat-trick, I was like, just give him the Ballon d'Or straight away for scoring a hat-trick in the El Clasico. But then, it wasn't just enough. Barcelona have just always been special.
Lamine Yamal said it a couple of weeks ago.
You know,
he said, but Real Madrid will scores, but we are rest assured that we score more.
And look at, and look at, do I call it tantrums that he threw in his goal celebration yesterday?
Of course. Some people said Lionel Messi generation was calm and quiet. The generation of these TikTok boys, they will tension each other.
They will tension each other.
All right.
Definitely.
Still sticking on the front page now, Nigerian Flying Eagles are going to be playing Senegal. Actually, the game has started against Senegal. If they do win that game, they make it to the semi-finals, and that automatically means they've made it to the World Cup. I remember, down the years, in the last decade, the last 2 decades, when you hear under 17, under 20, you know the next Super Eagles stars are there.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think anybody around, the ordinary man, the ordinary football fan, knows any of these boys in the last 2-3 sets. What, even this team, one win, 2 draws, they've not really been spectacular. Now the game against Senegal has started. If they are out, they are out. If they win, well, means there's a World Cup and we'll probably get a new crop of stars.
Yeah.
But the big question is, what is wrong? The Mikel Obi, Chinedu Obasi, Isaac Okoro, Promise Isaac, Ezekiel Bala, Ambrose Van Zeki didn't really shine with the Super Eagles. The late Adefemi Olubayo, all these guys, Solomon Okorunko, all these guys were under 20 guys. Obinna Osofo, all of them, many of them like that.
Most of these names all of these names I have mentioned are in the 2005, 2003 under 17.
Many of them like that.
Most of these names all of these names I have mentioned are in the 2005 under 20.
You can mention Kelechi Nwakali. You know, in many of these boys.
You know, in recent times, a lot of philosophies have clouded age group football. In the world at large, they will say it's about development, and development. But then we've forgotten the basics. These are the guys that we will later see in the context of that development per se.
In the next decade.
But these days, you see coaches and all of them, when they are going for major competitions like this, talking about the bare minimum. They just want to achieve the bare minimum in the name of taking it one step at a time. At the start of this whole thing, when they started at Wafu B, Nigeria won the Wafu B, true. But the coach will always tell you, let's take it one step at a time. Let's win the Wafu B to qualify for the AFCON. Then when we get to the AFCON, let's get to the semi-final to pick the World Cup ticket before we even talk about winning the AFCON. Now, this is a competition we've won 7 times as a country. But I'm very sure the last golden generation of under 20 said that Nigeria will remember will be in 2005.
Yeah,
that
without
is,
a doubt.
Was that 20 years ago?
20 years ago.
It's been 20 years since we had some real shiny stars.
Yeah.
The likes of Awuni came at a point.
Yes, under Kelechi and Acho, the 2013 set.
And also won it. But then not so many people will remember because of the kind of intrigues that we had playing at the under 20 World Cup.
Then I think the Messi factor too. I don't know.
And all of that. And a lot of people before our generation will also remember the Daman miracle in Saudi. So these are glory days, moments of glory that age football has produced for us. But these days,
even the Unduka Ogbade set.
So I think we just
85
we just too settled for the bare minimum these days. That we now forget that beyond.
But are these boys good
beyond
enough?
Development?
Are they good enough? Some person said it's because they are not using younger guys on that then when we used to have old men. But even in quotes, the old men, they still used to make it to the Super Eagles. Even Joseph Yobo of Nigeria 99, Ifeanyi Udeze.
And these young stars should be more promising. Because of their age and all of that.
So what is wrong?
So except for 1 or 2 players that you can easily pick, for instance, Kwarobo Harry, the striker from Sweden, who graduated from Beyond Limits Football Academy here. You saw his composed finish in the 2-2 draw against Kenya in the last game too. You can unpick maybe 1, 2, 3 players who are really good. But I think some things are still missing. They were better than this during the Wafubi tournament. Maybe because it was Wafubi regional and it was
Anybody
not
can
as
shine in
tough.
Wafubi.
And it was not as tough as what we are seeing at the AFCON. But I think there's still a missing link. Particularly, I miss Nasiru Saliu, the Academy Warriors midfielder, who
has gone a wall.
Who was in the midfield for them during the Wafubi. Maybe he's injured, maybe he's traveled, maybe he's somewhere just trying to fix something about his career too. We don't know. But then, that jigsaw in the midfield is lacking at the moment. Then the defense has to be marshaled better. Are we lining up with 3 or 4 at the back? Let's be consistent for.
It's a Guardiola Klopp philosophy that managers are using. Still sticking with the front page. I mean, we're rounding off on the front page though. Victor Osimhen will shine in the English Premier League. Dan the Bull Amokachi. Now we are back to this controversy.
Depends on where he goes.
Because at the weekend, some reports in Turkish media came out and said Victor Osimhen was going to Juve 100%. Then some journalists who said they have close rapport with Victor Osimhen came up to say no, it's not true. That he was still trying to get a deal with Manchester United and that it was even 85% done. And now, you know, just at the same time, Dan the Bull Amokachi, one Super Eagles player who had played, ex-Super Eagles player who had played in England, is now coming out to say he will be fit. Is there something that these guys are hearing?
I think in Amokachi's case, his prediction, as much as I know too, Napoli will not sell Victor Osimhen to Juventus. As a matter of fact, Juventus have put more money on the table
than any other club.
85 million euros, way beyond the release clause of 75 million that was set. But still, Napoli are still bent on not selling.
We are not selling to our rivals.
To their rivals in the Italian Serie A. So,
oui.
And personally, I don't think Victor will want to stay in Italy any longer.
He's conquered it, so why stay?
Why stay there? So why not look for a new challenge, like footballers will say in these days? But if you do well in England, I think it depends largely on where it goes. We've talked about Manchester United before. It might just be another case of Angel Di Maria. You look like the player that they needed. Everybody knew United they needed Di Maria that season. But then he came, but the body was just too heavy on him. Then Victor Osimhen is going to come. He's going to solve their goal-scoring problems and all of that. But then, trust me, he will be a better fit in a team like Arsenal or even Chelsea than Manchester United, because the problems are just insurmountable as United at the moment.
We just go and hard. Oh my goodness! All right, now we are done with the front page of the Punch Sports Extra. Of course, those headlines we gave you are not all. If you want more, please go out there, grab a copy from your vendor, and have a great read. Let's go into the meat of the show. What a weekend it was. Let's start with England, where a club owner came onto the pitch after the game and, in local parlance, as they will say, was giving the coach a voice. You know,
he raised voice for him.
He changed that for him small. Actually, no be small. Mararikis, am I getting the name correctly? The Greek owner of Nottingham Forest came down to the pitch after their 2-0 draw with Leicester City, and he was furious at manager Nuno Espirito Santo at the end of the game. Of course, that was a game everybody in the entire world had written off and given 3 points to Nottingham Forest. Guess what? Step up Leicester City in 85 or 86 minutes, and the 2-0 equalizer came. In fact, what happened was that Leicester City scored first before they got a goal, and then got another goal that was the 20th for Chris Wood. And everyone thought, okay, come back from behind to win. Nice story, nice headline. But no, Leicester City said we are down, but not out. Let's start from the very beginning, Bjorn. Now, what was that owner doing on that pitch at that time? Why was he killing the morale of the fans, killing the morale of the players, killing the morale of the coach? Or was he just energetic enough, even though they both come out to give their storyline, but we saw what we saw?
In terms of what we saw, I thought that only happened in the Nigeria Premier Football League. But then, it is what it is. From what I understand too, this guy, with his shares in Olympiacos, also go into the Champions League, he had to step back to ensure that he is not associated with both clubs, so that both clubs can be in the Champions League. He has paid the price, or probably more than the price.
Now, you know, by exiting
his
from
position,
the sure one.
Yeah, that means he has, maybe if he had 50% control at Olympiacos, he probably has 25%.
Reduced it.
So he's paid the
thinking
price
that Nottingham was sure
of coming into the
Champions League.
And if any game was to derail their ambition, it wasn't supposed
Leicester.
It wasn't supposed to be yesterday's game. So anybody can slam him all they want, but then he has enough defense too, in his own defense, to say, it's my money after all. And as long as he has access into that side of the, as long as they didn't withhold him and they didn't tell him that, Mister, you cannot come into this place, he could have done. Maybe the worst thing he could have done.
He said he was angry with the Taiwo Awoniyi situation. Taiwo Awoniyi hit the bar really bad. I really hope he's fine though, because that was quite nasty.
Yeah.
And then the medical guys were telling Nuno, who was about to make another sub, in 92nd minute, and the game was 98. So they could have gotten a goal with 6 minutes remaining. We've watched it several times in England.
Yeah.
But they told him to remove Awoniyi. And then, sorry, not to remove Awoniyi. So they sent Awoniyi back on the pitch. And then removed the player that to remove, and Awoniyi could not play. He was just on the pitch.
So they were playing like 10 and a half players.
10 and a half players.
Because Awoniyi at that moment was unfit, in quotes.
So, all right, moving on away from the Nottingham game. Now let's talk about Chelsea, who are playing Newcastle. A very, very important game when it comes to the top five battle this year. And Chelsea fans were actually very angry. But, well, they are profiting from the fact that Nottingham eventually did not win at the end of the day yesterday. But they lost to Newcastle 2-0. This Chelsea, is this sure that they are going to Champions League next season?
It's not. At this point, if I'm able to read them, I think they are just all focused on getting a piece of silverware through the UEFA Conference League. Then maybe give the Premier League to a final push, because what was that game against Newcastle? It didn't look like they stood any chance to have overturned or to have prevented that defeat, whichever way it was. And if you look at the adrenaline of teams like Newcastle United and Aston Villa in the last couple of weeks, going into the final 2 games of the season, it's something you have to be watchful about. And one team definitely will pay the price among the traditional big boys in the league. Pep Guardiola and Manchester City dropped points against Southampton on Saturday, and it looked like they were going to be threatened if Nottingham Forest had got all the points that they needed yesterday. But as it seems, it's evenly poised, and there are still 6 points for all the games to fight for. So it's still a lot to fight for, but it's uncertain who is going to make it into that top 5 at the season. But I just hope Chelsea do make it. At this point, if you look, they are playing Nottingham Forest in their last game.
Their last game of the season is Nottingham-Chelsea. That's a final.
So if we've had the Premier League champions decided already, I think the top 5 race is still very interesting enough.
There's even a possibility of Villa coming in, because Villa is playing Spurs and Manchester United, and these two teams looks like the season is over for them. They are just waiting for the Europa.
In the Europa League.
Exactly. So getting all 6 points can propel them into the Champions League. I mean, at a point everybody thought that was impossible.
And talk about Villa going back into the Champions League. I think I would like that too. This season they were not bad in that competition. They got as far as the
PSG. Quarterfinals.
Yeah, before they were eliminated. So not a bad move for them. If they went back into the competition, I'm very sure they would aim higher.
All right, let's take you over to Germany, where it was celebrations galore since Bayern Munich won the league a couple of days ago. It has been a different hurricane on social media, celebrating, jubilating, and of course the traditional beer celebration. Well, Michael Olise's dreads were not spared, and for those who have dreads, I mean, on social media they were saying if you pour beer in dreads, it takes almost 100 years, I mean, for you to start smelling normal. And that was why I was very angry. I was like, wow, I didn't know, I don't have dreads. So I mean they were saying the automatic thing to be done was an haircut or a permanent smell. I said, I did not know that one. But good one for them at the end of the day. You could see everybody with their family members, Harry Kane with his wife and kids, everybody, Vincent company. It's happy days over there, especially with Xabi Alonso confirmed to be leaving for Real Madrid. I mean, they have made no major opponents anymore except a surprise springs up.
Well, you don't know who is coming up, and surprises have been springing up before now. Before Bayern were altered last season, who knows who is coming in at Leverkusen next season? Alonso has built something. I just hope his exit is not going to disrupt the team as much as anybody can imagine. For Bayern Munich's title, I think the news for us in this part of the world is just Harry Kane.
Yeah.
Bayern Munich winning the title is
It's not news.
It's
Even
nothing,
to them.
it's nothing.
They were not
we've
really
ever seen.
celebrating.
So
They've won and won and won.
it was just about reclaiming their title for them after missing it for one season. But for us, it was about Harry Kane leaving, and maybe about Thomas Muller too, also leaving,
retiring
after many years too.
All right. The only place in Europe, the only country in Europe at the moment where the title has probably not been decided, of course, I mean among the top 5, not everywhere.
Then in Italy too.
Is in Italy. That's where we are going. Where Napoli did not win their game. And the commentator said, after Romelu Lukaku said, he said, you know what that means? Anytime this man scores, they're at least on their way to 3 points. But no, not in that game. Guess what? They didn't get all 3 points, and Inter did get all 3 points. So now there's a 1 point gap, 78-77, Napoli 78, Inter Milan 77, with 2 games to go. And you could see what the Inter Milan coach did, Simeone Inzaghi. A lot of his Champions League guys were arrested. It was the likes of Taremi and so on that played in that game. But they were able to win that encounter 2-0. 2 games remaining, Biodun, 1 point ahead. Do you think Antonio Conte's men can get this?
I think either of the 2 teams can still. Because recently, Inzaghi had to come out that they are challenging for these 2 main titles. He's not resting any player for the
But he was resting.
He was resting, but then he had to rest because he had players that are good enough to prosecute that. So 1 point going into 2 games left. Maybe at the end of next week, you might just now be saying,
can Napoli win their 2
they need
games?
a draw. Let me check who they are playing in their next 2 games, and that is what will determine how difficult or how easy that ride might be for them. Right,
but yesterday's game was supposed to be easy.
It was supposed to be easy for them.
Was it not Genoa?
That's how unpredictable it can be. So in the last 2 games with 1 point, right now you have the advantage because regardless of if the season ends the way it ends, let's say you both win your match, it means you win the league with 1 point.
With 1 point.
If you both play draws in your games too, it means you still maintain your 1 point. If you both lose, it means maybe it ends this way. No other team from 3rd place can come to talk on the 2 of you.
Just those 2.
So I think Napoli have the advantage right now. Maybe for the mentality of Antonio Conte and his players, I think they have I'm giving them a slight edge other than the 1 point lead too. Inter Milan, whether Inzaghi likes it or not, the attention is divided.
Of course.
He will think about the Champions League.
On the 31st.
He would also think about the league too. So, and the games are very, very close. But good for him, he would have to wrap up the Serie A before going into the Champions League final. So for whatever happens in the Serie A, he might just say, okay, now let's set our full focus and still get a piece of silverware this season.
Well, Turkey is not top 5 European leagues, but we have many of our guys there. It's looking like Osimhen's 1st season is grabbing his trophy.
Just 1 point is all they need because in Turkey, by then, if they get that 1 point, they will be 9 points clear with 3 matches remaining. And in Turkey, they use head-to-head even before goal difference. So Osimhen's Galatasaray have beaten Fenerbahce once this season, and they played a draw in the other game. So with 1 point in their next game, they already had the advantage, and they can just be declared
winner. The league. 1st season for Jose Mourinho is not getting anything in the league. He didn't really get anything out of the Europa League as well. I mean, is it going to be a jolly good ride for him?
Not so well. And at this point, we are already getting news that he might be on his way elsewhere. At what age? He's still looking like there's something special about the special one too. But then, 3 matches to go. Even if Gala gets their 1 point in the next game, the 2 other matches too, who knows? It is still very, very unpredictable. But then, it is for Gala to get their 1 point and protect it until the end of the season.
All right. So that is what we have for you from the English League, where the only thing they are fighting for right now is in the English League is the guys that are making the Champions League. In Spain, it's over. Congratulations to Barcelona. Of course, 7 point lead with 3 games to go. If you know the La Liga very well, you know it's done and dusted with what happened.
And with the form Barcelona.
Forget it. All right, very quickly, let's come back home to what happened yesterday. It was a fiesta. Everybody was there. There was music. There were social media superstars. We also had, what's his name again? The governor was equally around and all of that. Biodun, I think it was a fine one. Can we have something like that happen anytime soon? even though there was a lot of criticism yesterday.
And there will still be a trophy parade by Friday before their last home game of the season. But like criticism, among all things that could have been flopped yesterday, what was that guard of honor?
It was honor of God, really.
Almost inside the tunnel. I mean, anybody who was seated somewhere around the stadium would not even get a very good picture from there, except for those who were in front of that guard of honor. I saw Liverpool against Arsenal this morning. I had to just put the picture side by side. No, this is not it.
You got it.
With that sense of organization,
You got
with
it.
that, you don't do 100 and then do 98 in one of the most important things.
All right, there you have it. Thank you very much for being a part of this package. Thank you very much for sharing this time with us. A very big thank you to Abiodun Adewale for being here this afternoon. The week has just started today. It's going to be a very sweet one for us. Stay out of trouble, guys. God bless you. See you next week, Monday.